Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Invisible Innocence, and I am your host, Megan Moret. Anyone that knows me knows that I am a fierce protector of children, not just my own children, but of all children. I've been this way my entire life, even as a child. I'm not sure if there was one specific event or experience that caused me to have this innate instinct to stick up for and speak up for children, especially those that have gone missing. I was probably one of the few people back in the 1980s that actually looked and studied the pictures of missing children on milk cartons. I would look at this and I would burn that memory, that face, just by the small chance that I would see this child possibly on the street, at the mall, the park, or maybe the swimming pool. I think that is why this case that I am going to talk about today is extra difficult for me, extra emotional, and extra hard to believe. One of my favorite quotes about being a mother is this one: "A mother's strength is a force to be reckoned with, forged through the fires of adversity. A mother's courage knows no bounds, for she will do anything to protect her children. A mother's resilience is like a tree in a storm, bending but never breaking." Joslin Smith, a 6-year-old from South Africa, is believed to have been sold for trafficking purposes by her own mother. As I've discussed in other episodes, familial trafficking makes up around 40% of all trafficking cases, both labor and sex trafficking. It may be one of the most common forms of trafficking, but most definitely the hardest to understand. The human heart and human spirit can be so dark and so evil. I want to remind the audience that this topic is sensitive in nature and meant for a mature audience, so listener discretion is advised. Joslin Smith, an absolutely beautiful 6-year-old girl from Middle Post, South Africa, has been missing since February 19th, 2024. And when I say beautiful, I mean absolutely striking. She has these blondish, curly locks and bright green eyes. She has a smile that could light up the world. She is known to be extra friendly, really smart in school. She's a first grader and has a heart of gold. You see, no one knows where Jocelyn is, and no one is telling the truth about what happened to her. The 4 people that have been arrested on kidnapping and sex trafficking charges all have a different story to tell. Kelly Smith, whose real name is Raquel Chantel Smith, is being charged with trafficking her own 6-year-old daughter for the purposes of exploitation. Kelly Smith, 33 years old and a mother of 3 children, is also pregnant right now as we speak behind bars with her 4th child. By the time this episode airs, she may have given birth already. Female inmates that give birth in the prison system in South Africa in many cases are allowed to stay with their newborn child for the first 2 years. Kelly Smith's case may be different, however, due to the sinister nature of her crimes. On the morning of February 19th, 2024, 6-year-old Jocelyn was said by her mother to have not been feeling well. So she didn't send her to school. So she stayed in the care of Kelly's boyfriend, Jacqueline Apollos, otherwise known as Betta. Jacqueline said it was an uneventful day and that Jocelyn must have gone outside to play and she never returned. He said that she probably was taken right in the very front of her own home. On this day, Kelly, Jocelyn's mother, said that she went to work. She was a domestic worker, but it is also believed that she went out looking to score drugs, tick in particular. Tick is a drug that is similar to methamphetamine, speed, chalk. These are some of the street names that we may hear here in the United States. Tick is usually smoked through a straw into a light bulb, and then when it heats up, it makes a ticking sound. That's where it gets its name, tick. In this part of South Africa, drugs are a huge problem, one of the many issues that plague this country. This is just one of the many stories that has been told by Kelly, Jacqueline, and two others that have also been arrested, Stephen Van Ryn and Laurentia Lombard. Before I go any further, I think it's appropriate for me to give you just a little backstory on this village that they lived in and some of the circumstances surrounding this case. Joslin lived with her mother and siblings in Middle Post, just outside of Saldanha Bay, South Africa, in a shanty, or otherwise known as a shack. This shanty is held together literally by any materials that you can muster up, that you can find, and then tied together, nailed together, however you can get this structure to actually stand up. Unsanitary conditions for sure by American standards. This area has always been poverty stricken, and quite honestly, there is no end in sight. There are several reasons for this, and some of them go all the way back to the days of apartheid. The inequality among the races, the lack of agricultural and economic progress, poor infrastructure. Many are uneducated due to the lack of accessibility to education, to the schools, or transportation to get there. Corrupt politics, lack of policing and funds to police. And then, of course, you have the drugs. Joslin's case seems to be at the intersection of almost every single problem facing the Western Cape, this part of South Africa. Because of this destitute way of life, it may not be surprising to know that a child goes missing every 5 minutes in South Africa. Now, maybe you can understand why this case is so hard to understand, to research, and just to believe that it's even real. A man that Kelly Smith worked for 10 years ago said that Kelly seemed to be a smart girl. She even had a few certifications in school, and she worked for him as a domestic worker for those 10 years. I think here in the United States, we would consider a domestic worker anything from a maid to a nanny to a gardener, someone that did laundry, someone that really just took care of a home or just your general household chores. This man says that when he saw Kelly in the news after she had been arrested, he hardly recognized her. She looked tired, sick, and probably twice as old as she really was. He said that she looked as though she was just gone, not there. She just had just a blank stare in her eyes. This is what addiction does to people. It can turn you into something else, someone else. In this case, a monster. A massive search party took place to find Joslin, which actually does not happen in missing persons cases in this part of South Africa. And the only reason that it did was social pressure. The locals, the neighbors, the communities, they were absolutely outraged. They thought, how could no one see this little girl anywhere, walking the streets, wandering about, especially because this little girl stood out. She stood out from everyone, especially the children. Like I said, she had this light curly hair and these light, bright green eyes, living in a Black community. I would gather that her mother probably had some British or European heritage somewhere back in her history, because she also has the same lighter skin, light hair, and green eyes. The locals were also not believing the ridiculous stories that were being told by her and her boyfriend. The press took notice of this major outrage and decided to get involved and cover this story, in which this then prompted authorities to also get involved. Politics is also a big thing in South Africa. They will only get involved with something if they think that it's going to benefit them in a political race or a political situation. Even 300 members of the Navy were deployed to help search high and low for Joslin. They searched different shipping vessels and containers in the nearby Saldanha Bay. There were drones flying, and sniffing dogs were also used. Not long after the search began, they found bloodied clothes, a blanket, and a knife in a nearby field outside of a squatter's camp. The blood, after being tested, did come back to be Joslin's blood. And what does this mean? This does not mean that she is necessarily deceased. It just shows that her blood was, in fact, found on these torn clothes and a blanket. When both men, Jacqueline Appelis and Stephen Van Ryn, were arrested and interrogated for 36 long hours, they finally admitted to kidnapping Joslin. They told authorities that Kelly conspired with them to sell Joslin for muti, or a muti killing, for 20,000 rands, which, now get this, is an equivalent of $1,164 by American terms, in American currency. That's right. So $1,164. They said that they sold this beautiful 6-year-old girl to a local man. A muti killing is a murder that is a form of human sacrifice practiced by some African tribes. The murder is carried out after body parts are removed while the victim is still alive. It is believed that this practice wards off evil spirits, attracts good luck, used in love potions, used to threaten others, or just for protection. And it is important that this diabolical practice be performed when the victim is still alive. This is torture. It's evil. I don't care what your ancestors have done or what the cultural, things that you do to people. This is something that is just beyond normal. It's beyond human. It is just sick. Kelly's sister said that Kelly had admitted to her that she did in fact know where Joslin was. She said that she was in a squatter's camp not far from her home and that she had sold Joslin for money. She said Kelly's drug addiction has turned her into a real life zombie, almost like a witch. She pleaded with her to disclose this information, to disclose where Joslin was so that they could go and find her and bring her home. Kelly later stated that her sister was lying and that her sister was jealous of her. And that is why she was trying to put Kelly behind bars forever. Some may be wondering, where is Joslin's father? Does she have a father? And who is he? She does have a father, and he is looking high and low, far and wide for his daughter. His name is Jose M. Key. And this is Kelly's ex-boyfriend and Joslin's father. And he claims that Kelly sold their daughter to pay a drug debt that has been owed by her and her current boyfriend. He, along with his mother, Joslin's paternal grandmother, has searched for Joslin and pleaded with Kelly to tell them where she is. She denies the claims, saying that she has no idea where her daughter is and that she wants her to come home. It has also been stated by multiple sources that Kelly never once was involved in any of the search parties for her daughter. A woman that was arrested on suspicion of helping plan the kidnapping and trafficking of Joslin also said that she had no part in anything, but she did know that Kelly was involved, that Kelly had conspired to sell her own daughter for trafficking purposes. As you can imagine, the public scrutiny against Kelly has been overwhelming. She's had to publicly deny accusations that she sold her own daughter, during this time also withdrawing from TIC or methamphetamine. So after she was put in jail, she was badly beaten on several occasions by the inmates. And then when it was disclosed that Kelly was again, in fact, pregnant, they put her into protective custody. You don't mess with children. Even the worst of criminals, the people that are on death row that will spend the rest of their life in prison, do not appreciate people who hurt their children, especially their own children. And quite honestly, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for people that do those things either. There are thousands and thousands of mothers that are poor, living under the poverty line. They are drug addicted, even uneducated, that would never in a million years sell their 6-year-old child into trafficking to endure that type of torture and trauma, not for all the money in the world. As of today, the next hearing has been pushed out to October 21st, 2024. And this is due to more evidence that has just been recently found in the case against Kelly and her 3 accomplices. I wish they could find Joslin, but in the meantime, any evidence that leads to the prosecution of these animals responsible for this it's a small glimmer of hope. Even though it is common for South African children to go missing or to be trafficked, there's legislation dealing with this form of organized crime, like the Prevention and Combating Trafficking Persons Act of 2013. And specifically in the case of the children, the Children's Act 38 of 2005. This legislation criminalizes trafficking and seeks to combat the trafficking of minors. This case literally took my breath away when I first read about it back in February. So I started researching it, and there wasn't much in the beginning. And I read about trafficked people and trafficked children all the time. But this little girl has the face of an angel. And I am still trying to digest the fact that her mother has been accused of willingly selling her for less than $1,200. It's just a whole lot to try and think about and to digest and understand without being frustrated and angry and mad and wanting some sort of answer. Just anything, any answer would be better than where this case is sitting right now. I will be following this case closely, and I am eager to hear about the new evidence and see if justice will prevail. In the meantime, could we all please say a prayer for Joslin to be found? The rest of her family and her community deserve closure one way or the other, and miracles do happen. If you or someone you know is being exploited in this way, please call 911 when it is safe to do so. Or as a resource, call the Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888. Thanks so much for listening. And please, if you see something, say something. We'll see you next time.